We have been working on it with the Russian counterparts, and I think we have got very close now to signing the agreement.
Good luck with that. You mentioned the Ukrainian crisis, and if we read reports in Western media, there's an imminent war between Russia and Ukraine on the cards, and clearly Western countries take a very oppositional, I would even say inimical view to Russia. For a shrewd politician like yourself, don't you think that it's perhaps too precarious of a time to expand Pakistan's geopolitical horizons?
Well, firstly, this doesn't concern us. I mean, we have a bilateral relationship with Russia. We really want to strengthen it. As I said, regions develop. It's not countries don't develop in isolation. It's because a whole region goes up. Like we saw the European Union. I mean, I was in university in England when the European Union came into being, and then the whole area standard of living went up. So we want to sort of really, we hope that sanctions are lifted on Iran so that we're short of gas here, and with Iran it's the cheapest gas we can get. And similarly, we hope that India one day, I mean, Indian leadership, I wish they would concentrate on raising people out of poverty in India rather than proving to the world that the Hindus are the most superior race. I mean, their leadership, how can a leadership not worry about having the highest poverty in the world is in the Indian subcontinent? How could they not worry about it rather than trying to prove to the world that the Hindus are superior?
Well, but Prime Minister, on the other hand, many nations go through such period. I mean, it could be more or less painful historically, but the spell of nationalism has affected many countries historically. Now, you mentioned that you don't want to play camp politics anymore. You want to be a bridge. And this is a very admirable goal, also a very beautiful metaphor. I think Turkey or even Ukraine framed their foreign policy in such terms a few years back, but they were disappointed. What makes you believe that Pakistan can actually pull it off, being this bridge, let's say in Eurasia, when so many other countries attempted it and failed?
Well, firstly, let me just say one thing. As a student of history, I do not believe that military conflicts solve problems. I believe they give rise to so many other problems. You go in to solve one problem. Supposedly the US went into Iraq to fight Al-Qaeda, but in the end ISIS came into being. If you look back, I mean, look at the conflict since 9/11. I mean, if a third party dispassionately did a proper analysis of so many people killed, what was achieved at the end? What happened in Afghanistan? 20 years of, God knows, hundreds and thousands of people dying. What was the achievement? So therefore, I'm not a believer in military conflicts. I believe that civilized societies resolve the difference through dialogue. And the countries that rely on military conflict have not studied history properly.
Well, they have not studied history properly, and they haven't faced any accountability, because in this day and age, power still, decides what has to be done. Do you believe, on a personal, or let's say on a political level, in some sense of accountability, maybe historical accountability, do you think things will change in the world so that all the great aspirations that you have could be realized without us getting very cynical? Because I hear what you're saying on an emotional level, but I have covered so many wars and I have seen so many people killed absolutely for nothing that I simply don't believe that Western leaders care about things like human lives or even development in the developing countries. I'm sorry for saying that.
It's true. Most leaders, the main concern is to stay in power. So if to stay in power, there's what they call as a good war, they won't mind loss of few human lives,
well,
as long as
collateral damage. It's not people. It's collateral
exactly.
damage.
I mean, as someone who looks upon the world from a spiritual point of view, I think it is insane to have a conflict with the idea of people dying and thinking that you will get more popular because of that. I think throughout history, human beings have done this. Supposedly great leaders came in and caused death and destruction. So I believe, for instance, take this Ukraine conflict. I mean, for the life of mine, I cannot really believe that there is any chance, there's any possibility of a conflict. Because the consequences, forget about what will happen to the combatants. For the developing world, already the price of oil has gone up because of the prospect of a conflict. Ukraine supplies wheat to the world, and for that matter, Russia. Now imagine what will happen. Already the world is suffering from the after effects of the COVID-19. Imagine if there's a conflict. What will happen to the poor countries? Already the poor countries are suffering. They are already in debt because they had to incur debt because of the consequences of the COVID-19 fallout. So I cannot in my mind understand how can they even have got this close to a conflict? I can't understand this.
We were talking about the Ukrainian conflict, and obviously we, the Russians and our Ukrainian neighbors, are very affected, but you have your own conflict to solve, and it may be a very stupid question on my part, but because we all know that, bad peace is better than a good war, but still, historically, do you think it's better to leave a conflict in a limbo for decades on end? Or do you think issues should be solved when they're hot?
You see, if humans want, they can solve any conflict. The problem is that the humans, the leaders, and I'm talking about the leaders, I'm sure people in Ukraine and in Russia, everyone understands that if there's a conflict, there will be consequences. Everyone will be worse.
It's not about the people. People on either side don't want this conflict to happen.
So exactly. But I think that the leadership in the countries is then stuck that if we withdraw from this position, what will be the consequences to us politically? Because politically there are consequences always. And I think it takes very powerful, great leaders who rise above this and who think about the effects on the human beings.
I do want to ask you about great leadership, but very quickly, I know that you have tried to deal with your mutual grievances with India over Kashmir, and I'm sure you're not satisfied with the results of those efforts. Are you going to leave that issue to your successors, or are you still hoping to try something new?
Do you know, when my party came into power in 2018, first thing I did was to reach out to India. And I told them, our only issue is Kashmir. Let's sit down on the table and resolve it. Let's have a roadmap. But I didn't realize, and remember, I'm the one who knows India better than anyone because cricket is a passion, in the subcontinent. And because of, me being captain of cricket here and sort of playing over 10 years against India, I know India better than most people. I know the senior journalists, their politicians, their sports people. So I know India very well. So I immediately reached out. But then I discovered, to my horror, that this is not the India I used to know, because it's been taken over by this mad ideology. It's a racist ideology, which was inspired by the Nazis. The founding fathers were inspired by the Nazis. You can Google on your phone and you can, the founding fathers praised the Nazis, racial superiority, hatred towards the Muslims, towards the Christians. And they look back some 1,000 years how Hinduism was the superior religion and culture. And you see, there's a negative nationalism, there's a positive nationalism. You must distinguish between the two. I can inspire my people by saying, look, you were a great nation, let's now get back again. But if I say you were a great nation, but because of these other human communities, you could not reach the top, so shift the hatred towards them,
Mm-hmm.
there is always bloodshed.
Prime Minister, I'm sure your counterpart in New Delhi would disagree, but if Prime Minister Modi wants to share his own views, we would be more than happy to travel to New Delhi and interview him on that very...
Listen, I would love to debate with Narendra Modi on TV.
I would
love to talk.
But you know, before we organize this debate, and by the way, RT would be happy to moderate it, me personally, but I have an editor who...
It would be so good for over 1 billion people on the subcontinent if we can resolve our differences through a debate rather than through...
That would be amazing. But before we go there, I have an editor who is a huge cricket fan, and he follows cricket and obviously your fate also very, very closely. And he told me that your team haven't toured India since 2013, while the Indian team hasn't been to Pakistan since 2006. Is there any chance, that's his question, is there any chance of restarting bilateral cricket tours as a way of rebuilding ties and as a way of rekindling that passion? Because if you have a common passion, there's something common inside of you. We are all humans deep down. I mean, we are all the same. So, you know, both the hatreds and the loves, they are shared. Do you think there's something, do you think cricket can be a saving grace?
Well, we just played India a few months back, and I have to say, the celebrations that took place in Pakistan when they beat India in the 2020 World Cup, you know, I haven't seen people so happy for a while. But unfortunately, sports is connected to politics, no matter how much we try and separate it. Now, what India has done in Kashmir, it has unilaterally revoked its status, which was a special status, since 75 years, guaranteed, the United Nations Security Council guaranteed the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination. So through their own democratic right, they could decide whether they wanted to be Pakistan or India. When they revoked that right, and that was 5th August 2019, that's when, unfortunately, things have got worse. Now, if we try to pretend everything is normal, it means Pakistan has abandoned the people of Kashmir. So therefore, you know, we played in a third country like, you know, this World Cup. But bilateral ties, I think, will have to wait till there's some sort of a breakthrough here.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask specifically about Pakistan, because this year marks the 75th anniversary of your country coming into being, and the figure of Muhammad Ali Jinnah still looms large with his philosophy of marrying modernity with traditional grassroots culture. And I think it's not only in Pakistan, but I see this philosophy coming to prominence all around the world, even in Russia. I think Vladimir Putin subscribes to a similar brand of enlightened conservatism. When you see progressive things around the world, you benefit from them, but you stay true to your sort of your inner core, your collective soul. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's becoming so popular around the world?
Because whenever you try and superimpose another culture on a nation, it doesn't work. You know, colonialism, what did it do? What the colonialists created was a thin lot of people who imitated the colonialists, who in Pakistan would be called the westernized elite. But there was a big gap between them and the rest of the population. So nations evolve organically. They borrow from all over the world, but they are rooted in their own culture and history. If you cut that off, I mean, it has severe consequences all over the world. When you cut off a country from its roots, a nation, and try and ape another culture, they become neither one thing or the other. In Urdu, we say neither a teeter or a bater, neither quail or a partridge. So it's very important that the countries stay rooted in their own history and culture, and that's how countries evolve as a whole. What has happened after colonialism is that you have a tiny set of elite which pretends that they're Western, and the gap between them and the rest becomes wider and wider. It's what happened in Iran. The Iranian Revolution was that the elite of the Shah of Iran became cut off from the mass of the population. So there was a huge reaction against it. In Pakistan, what we are trying to do is obviously learn from all advanced societies, and right now, the nation we can learn most from is China, because if my main emphasis is to raise people out of poverty, no human society has achieved what China has done. So therefore, we learn from everyone, but we should be rooted in